The High Court in Pretoria has ruled in favour of asylum seekers and special permit holders in South Africa. It has ordered the Social Development Minister to include them in the COVID-19 Social Relief Distress Grant of R350 a month. The court ruled that people who hold asylum seeker and special permit status in the country and whose documents were valid at the start of the national state of disaster may apply for the COVID-19 Social Relief Distress Grant. Now, this after the Scalabrini Centre took the minister to court. The head of advocacy and legal advisor at the centre, Gandar, joins me now via Skype. Sally, hi. Very good evening. Thanks indeed for joining us. Quite a victory for you. I mean, why was it so important for you as the centre to mount this challenge?
Thanks so much, Griselda. It's great to be here. We'd gotten a number of calls from various asylum seeker and special permit holder clients of ours. And we're aware of partner organizations that got similar calls, just showing the desperation of the situation for those individuals. And we tried to engage with the Minister of Social Development as well as the National Coronavirus Command Council to try and ensure that South Africa's response was as inclusive as possible. Unfortunately, that engagement didn't initially work. And so we sought the help of our attorneys at Norton Rose Fulbright to launch urgent court action, which we launched in May last year. Yeah. And yesterday's order was the outcome of that.
So the Minister of Social Development's directive has now been declared basically unlawful. So asylum seekers and special permit holders from which countries will now also be able to benefit?
Sure. So, look, asylum seekers are one step before refugees. They're waiting for the adjudication of their refugee claim. They could be from any country. It could be Somalia, DRC. Many people come to South Africa based on sexual orientation and gender identity grounds, and that could be from any of the countries in Africa that criminalize that. So we can't say specifically which country an asylum seeker might be from. We do know that many asylum seekers are stuck in Home Affairs backlogs, and the Auditor General's report of November last year said that the backlog before the RAB would take in excess of 60 years to get rid of. So that's the situation for asylum seekers. Special permit holders come from Angola, from Zimbabwe, and from Lesotho.
All right. So do we have a figure then of approximately how many asylum seekers and special permit holders will now be able to access this grant?
The court order does say that it's only those asylum seekers and special permit holders whose documentation was valid at the start of the national state of disaster, which was on the 15th of March. We know that from there are still further eligibility requirements. So if you're receiving UIF or a salary or any other economic benefit, then you wouldn't be eligible for this grant. The Minister of Social Development has been given 5 days from the court order to quantify that. So she would probably be best placed to answer. We do know that there are various figures that get reported from the government, from Stats SA, etc. Earlier this year, a parliamentary written reply states that there were 188,000 active asylum seekers on Home Affairs' system. We don't know the accuracy of that and how many of those would still be active as of 15th of March, but that's a beginning figure. Many of those may then be able to apply for UIF or something else, and so it would be much lower than that for the asylum seekers. And then we're not sure how many people would be eligible from the special permit side.
So just some clarity for anyone who might be asking at home. So no back pay. This would apply as if the grant had been approved as of the 18th of June, which was yesterday.
That's correct. So the grant is not retrospective. It doesn't go to the May, which is when it was announced, but it does, the individuals who are eligible would be able to get from June onwards.
Think then can be used to verify these applicants to ensure that those who are now supposed to benefit are indeed those who meet that criteria?
I didn't hear the beginning of your question, but the same criteria as any citizen would have to be used. The only barrier that we saw was that there was this exclusion based on documentation status. And so that's what we'd ask the courts to remove.
Yeah. So, what does this then mean going forward? Do you believe that government had erred in the first instance of saying basically that, those with special permits and, asylum seekers should not benefit to begin with, because they also do not benefit, from any other grant that is basically given out in South Africa?
Yeah, so the usual SASSA grant is available to recognized refugees, to permanent residents, and to citizens. So these groups would have been excluded. We believed, and this is what we put before the court, was that this is an extraordinary situation. And in order for all of us to be safe, we have to ensure a whole of society approach. And that includes people who may have been rendered more vulnerable by virtue of their documentation status here in South Africa. There is scope within the regulations to allow for more people to be eligible in the situation of a national state of disaster. And so that's what was argued before the court and accepted by the court.
All right. Thank you very much indeed for your time. The head of advocacy and legal advisor at the Scalabrini Centre, Sally Gandar, thank you very much for joining us on The Full View this evening. Thanks for your time. Let's take a recap once again of tonight's top stories.